Welcome to Opera Talks with Tom and Friends. And as we're approaching the end of the 2020-2021 reimagined season of the Dayton Opera and our final production of Verdi's La Traviata Essential Opera, I thought it'd be great to have a chat with my friend and the conductor of that production, Patrick Reynolds. Patrick is, of course, no stranger to the orchestra podium here in Dayton. He is the associate conductor of the Dayton Philharmonic Orchestra, conductor of the Dayton Philharmonic Youth Orchestra, and is a professor of music conducting ensembles at the University of Dayton. And of course, Pat has had a nice history with Dayton Opera, which started in 2009 with, not coincidentally, a production of La Traviata in 2009, which was followed by productions of Romeo and Juliet, The Magic Flute, and The Consul. So we're very glad to have you with us here today, Pat. And we're just going to talk a little bit about the fact that we are reprising a very different sort of Traviata for our audience with this production, and I'm just going to leave it to you to have your thoughts about your first production of Traviata back in 2009, all those many years ago, which I will also point out was directed by our artistic director designate, Kathleen Clausen. So the associations are rich around this work. And so Pat, say a few words to kick us off here.
Hey Tom, it's great to see you, even if on Zoom, and I'm just overjoyed to be part of Dayton Opera's return to the live stage. I think this is music itself, opera itself is an emotional enough experience, but wrapping all the what hopefully are post-COVID experiences, we're all sort of triply emotional about this return to the stage. So I'm just delighted to be a part of it. But I've got to say, this is even more special for me because, as you said, Traviata was my first Dayton opera, and actually it was my first real opera ever. I had conducted Brundabar. You remember when we sort of had a collaboration with Victoria Theater and Kettering Children's Choir with that wonderful Franz Krause children's opera, but I'd really had very little experience in the pit. Charles Mandelkin Wilson, I don't know if I've ever told you this story. One day I was over at the station, the radio station, and Charles said, you know, you should conduct opera. And I have absolutely no idea where Charles got that idea. And he says, I'm going to talk to Tom Bankston. I have no idea if he ever talked to you or not. But the phone rang and I got the call to conduct Traviata. So, but I just want to tell you just a little bit about what I did to prep for that first full-scale opera. I had not run a professional opera rehearsal. And so I was kind of curious to see, how is this done? It was just now 11 or 12 years ago, so it's been a while back. I've had a lot of experience since then, but at the time I was rather new to this. So my wife had a connection in London, and I happened to be teaching with UD Study Abroad, University of Dayton Study Abroad in London that very summer, and they were doing Traviata. Her connection is a Czech language coach at Covent Garden. And he talked to Tony Pappano, the music director of Covent Garden, talked to his secretary, whose name is Rosemary, and said, there's this conductor in Ohio who wants to come watch your rehearsals. And so I ended up going to 3 rehearsals. I went to an orchestra-only rehearsal. It was Sonia, the Covent Garden Orchestra, and Tony Pappano, and that was it. And we watched a 2.5-hour rehearsal of Traviata. And then I got to go to the Zitz in the house, in that beautiful theater. I was the only non-staff person there. And Thomas Hampson walked by and said hi, like he was supposed to know me. Renee Fleming walked by and said hi, like she was supposed to know me. Tony Pappano, the conductor, finally came up and said, now, what is your situation? Why are you here? And I said, I'm conducting my first Traviata. And then I came to the dress, and I was also at the dress the only non-staff person there. And I basically just soaked the whole thing in. I took a score with me and I filled it with notes. So when I came back to Dayton, I had just I was just so ready to do this. And I've been overjoyed to have been part of other productions since then. But that was my first introduction to full-scale professional opera. And I, with the help of nobody less than Tony Pappano.
Well, that's a really the way to go. I mean, the way to start out an association with a piece. I mean, for heaven's sakes, at Covent Garden, no less, with Renee and Thomas Hampson.
It was really great. And, you know, working with Kathleen Clausen for that first production, I'm so glad that this is going full circle here, because I don't know if she did this intentionally, but she was sort of a gentle first director to work with. You know, I mean, she gets the job done, but she was easygoing, and maybe she was very understanding. This guy's a little bit new. I can tell you one more. This is actually a Tom Bankston story about that, because this is all very familiar to me. It's a big memory for me doing your first opera. It's the first music with the maestro, which is the reading when the cast and principals get together with the conductor and the pianist, and they first read through the music. You have a little meeting and everybody gets to introduce themselves. And they were going around the room, and each principal was saying who they are and kind of a little bit about where they had worked. And I was getting a little intimidated, because where I had worked, that was a rather short list at that time. And they were coming around the room, and I was actually, Tom, I was ready to say, my name is Patrick Reynolds, and I've been to a lot of operas. And when I got to me, Tom, you said, and this is our conductor, Patrick Reynolds. And we went on. It was fantastic. So I did not have to say anything about myself. But I'm appreciative that I've, in the meanwhile, gotten a lot more experience, and I bring much more experience to the pit. Of course, that was a full-scale chorus every minute of the opera production, with all of the staging that we're used to seeing. And
not so much this time.
Not so much this time. But you know something? I think that everybody who hears the words shortened version or cut version, their first response is kind of, what are they going to cut? And that was my first my first reaction in a way. But Jonathan, our stage director, you know, sent me his list of cuts, and also sent me his vision for the piece. And you start to realize that it is a complete work, the way he conceives it, the way we're performing it. You don't get in there and feel like you're seeing the Cliff's Notes Reader's Digest version of the opera. It really is the drama and the music and all of the operatic character of La Traviata. It is complete. And it didn't take me long to feel that way. You know, as I flipped through the score the very first time with his cuts, I have to admit, you know, my shoulder kind of went up a couple of times, and I said, oh, not that. Oh, and then you realize that everything starts to flow and everything starts to fit, and that I sincerely believe that no audience member will go in and say, oh, I can't believe they left that out, because it's all the best stuff is in there. All the good stuff is there. The drama is completely intact. Even though things are presented sometimes in slightly different ways, it is in itself a artistically envisioned Traviata. Right. It is not a reduction. It is not a condensed version. The drama and the essence of the music are all there.
Essential music.
The essence, the essential elements of the opera are all there, and I really do admire this approach a great deal. I can imagine it might work in other situations, other opportunities to do versions of operas that were not quite complete. It is kind of interesting, Tom, to study for this, because there are tempo relationships between the different parts of the opera where you have less time to kind of establish one pace. One that I often think about is the finale to the second act, which in the original version plays out over a longer period of time. And those tempo relationships are, you get used to them with this much time and this much repetition to deal with them. But when they're condensed, you're going to a new tempo quicker than you think. And so I've had time to let that settle in. But sometimes I wonder how a musician who has played the opera before in the orchestra, or any one of our principals in the cast, how they react to having to make it's not a transition, but to how you move through the score at a different pace than you're used to moving through it. The truth is, some of the cuts are the same, are standard cuts. Some of the cuts we're doing are standard cuts. And so all the singers will be used to that. But there are a few spots where we'll just simply, we go from one thing to the next with a little less time. And so I'll be very curious. I think part of my job as conductor and part of the job of the cast is to kind of smooth over, to, kind of sand over these transitions so that they're natural. In the overture,
and also, Jonathan Poppy, our stage director, has provided some very nice narrative things for the audience to read at different moments throughout the piece that sort of connect the moments to moments. So I think, it'll have a sort of poetic quality about it that I think will be very engaging. Yeah.
I think that's the primary genius of his concept of this, are these narrations that happen on screen, that the audience can take in at their own pace. There's music going on, but it's not unlike, I suppose, Tom, the Star Wars, where they show in the movies where the story kind of goes down the screen and it kind of catches you up. This is where we are. This is what's happened. And it works all in a really good flow.
Yeah, exactly. You have I think a wonderful cast to work with this time, and actually one of the members of your 2009 Traviata, Ken Shaw, is doing a different role this time, the role of Giorgio Germont.
Sure.
And it's a role that he has done many times back in his days when he was touring with New York City Opera, and so he was very happy to step into that role, and I think Ken will bring a lot of gravitas and to that role and heart that will, I think, translate very well for him.
I always enjoy working with Ken. The last time I worked with Ken, he played quite an evil character. He was the secret police in The Consul.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking forward to seeing a more human Ken Shaw in this.
And of course our Violetta is Chloe Olivia Moore. And you've not worked with Chloe before, no?
I've not worked with Chloe, but I've worked with Matthew Vickers.
With Matthew Vickers, our Alfredo, who he was your Rodolfo in the Bohème that you.
He was a spectacular Rodolfo. Matthew is remarkable, but I'll tell you, and you can refresh my memory. Don't I recall a conversation where Matthew said, "You know what? I'd really like to sing. I'd like to sing Alfredo in La Traviata." Yeah. Were you at that conversation?
Yes, I think it was. And
did that influence?
Well, of course it did. Things, and he had done some other Verdi roles like the Duke in Rigoletto, some heavier things, but he was very keen to look at this more lyric tenor role of Verdi's, and he had not done it before, which was a surprise to me. So it all worked out well for us all. Yeah,
it's a very, very strong cast.
Yeah, and we, as we did in our Don Giovanni, that our other essential opera production this year. The orchestra will be on stage at the back of the stage, and the cast members all in the sort of 4-stage area. It really brings the drama really into the laps of the audience, and I think that's a very important thing, particularly with this piece.
It goes right back, Tom, to this idea of essential opera, and I think that this production does have a way of really bringing focus to the drama. And I'm not saying that elaborate costumes and elaborate sets are not part of the spectacle of opera. That's a huge part of what we expect to see. But in this case, it's more direct, it's more focused. The drama, the music really come to the fore without the imagery that you might normally expect. I'm assuming we're going to have some projection on the stage, and which is extremely effective. You know, it's interesting having the orchestra on the stage. The balance issues, and I was in the hall for Don Giovanni. The balance issues are, I expected there to be more, and they're really not. Which is pretty incredible, because the singers are really quite far downstage and the orchestra is far upstage, and so there is a separation. One thing I am very curious about is, even though there are monitors everywhere so we can communicate, I really will be diving into the deep end right away, getting used to this idea of not seeing the actual singer, but seeing them on a screen. Now, singers, our audience may or may not know that, are used to looking out toward the audience and having monitors that they can see that show the conductor conducting, so they can act off to this direction or that direction, and they can still see the conductor. The conductor, on the other hand, is used to looking up and seeing actual humans and knowing when they're breathing and knowing how they're moving and seeing their eyes and the whole bit. And that's a little bit different. I've talked to Neil Gittleman about this quite a bit, just how we address that. And I'm looking forward to just seeing how well we adapt to this new paradigm of presenting opera.
Yeah, you may see in the future some other productions for Dayton Opera in this format. I mean, it's and the ability to bring it to the drama right to the fore with the audience, I think is tremendous.
Well, you know, Tom, I'm being an academic teaching at a university. I've railed strongly against all the virtual teaching. I as a musician, I don't get this idea of making music across a Zoom screen. And a lot of people have been sort of forced into the situation. The thing that I love so much about our production is that we're using technology, but the music is live. If you want to come to the house, you can be there and see it live. If you still would rather be at home, you can stay at home and you can watch it on, you know, we have state-of-the-art screens, state-of-the-art cameras, state-of-the-art sound, so you can get the best possible in-home experience. But what I love about this is that we're bringing people into the house. For, you know, so many people are doing only online, and we are making this venture back into public performances. So to me, that's just hugely emotional.
Great, and I'm so happy that as it has worked out to have you conducting my final production here at Dayton Opera, and it will be I think an exciting time, and I mean, and I think our audience is craving to be back in the hall and to see and to the live experience of the opera. There were certain elements of that we're not able to still have, which is our wonderful Dayton Opera chorus. Luckily enough, Verdi wrote some great ensembles in which principal characters are doubling all of those. So we will have a sense of the fully realized Libiamo in Act One, I think, and the fact that we're down so far and close to the audience, I think it'll still be an impactful.
Absolutely. And Tom, I do want to say what an honor it is to be just part of this production and how appreciative I am of you for just giving me this chance to, I have to say, opera conducting has always been sort of a dream of mine, but you know, you can only dream so much, and opportunities have to come your way, and you have to have this skill sets to do things. And so a lot of times it doesn't work out. But for me, I feel like in my time in Dayton, uh, I will remember my time on the podium of Dayton Opera as being the most rewarding and personally meaningful times I've had. And I know I owe that to you, and I really do appreciate it a great deal.
Well, thank you. And I hope that you're when you're telling stories about Traviata again in the future, the story of the Dayton Opera Traviata will trump the Covent Garden first Traviata of yours.
It already does. It already does.
Well, thanks for being with us here today, Pat, and thank you all for joining us for Opera Talks with Tom and Friends.